All right, this Colin Kaepernick thing never ends. Now, Trent Dilfer is in the mix here, and he drives me crazy. All right, so here's what Dilfer says about Kaepernick sitting for the national anthem. He says, this is a backup quarterback whose job it is to be quiet and sit in the shadows. Yet he chose a time when all of a sudden he became the center of attention, and it has disrupted that organization. Okay, Trent, go ahead and shut up, okay? Now, I know it's a freedom of speech. I know he's got his right to say anything he likes. I am now countering his speech by saying, please shut up. So look, is Trent Dilfer a racist guy who thinks blacks should know their role? I don't know Trent Dilfer at all. I'd be very surprised if Trent Dilfer was that kind of guy. He played in the NFL. He's got to have 1,000 black friends, and I'm sure that he doesn't think that way, and I'm sure that he thinks he's talking about the backups here and not having to do with race. But it's certainly not how it's perceived. First, let me give you Colin Kaepernick's reaction, then I'll give you mine. He says, I think that's one of the most ridiculous comments I've heard. Kaepernick says, the fact that you say you're a backup quarterback, stay in your place, that's an issue. So, look, I think the Dilfers of the world don't know the history of this. Anytime African-American athletes stood up, so when they did in the 1968 Olympics and famously raised their fists after they'd won the medals, everybody said they should know their role. That's not the time to be doing political protests. When Muhammad Ali, he was willing to risk going to prison because he wouldn't go to Vietnam. He said, I'm not going to go kill brown people over there when brown people over here are not getting the proper treatment. And everybody said he should know his role and he should be in the shadows. So I hope that Trent Dilfer didn't mean anything bad by it, but he's got to educate himself a little bit on that, because that is what old school racists used to say to black people to make sure they never spoke up, they never spoke out for their own rights, the rights that they have as American citizens. And yes, you also have a freedom of expression to sit during the national anthem. So that, or the Star Spangled Banner, or in a story we just did about a student, Native American student who's doing it, the Pledge of Allegiance, okay? And there's one other wrinkle to this that I hadn't thought of until Kaepernick responded this way. He said, I would ask him, referring to Dilfer, to really have a conversation with the families of the people that have been murdered and see if he still feels that way. Because I bet you he doesn't, just because he hasn't experienced that type of oppression. So the last part of that is very fair and what we talked about all the time. Trent, because cops have not killed your family members doesn't mean that there are no cops who have killed people in a way that is unjust. It doesn't mean all cops do it, but some cops do. And because you didn't experience it doesn't mean that others didn't. But the part that I hadn't anticipated, and I think Kaepernick makes a good point, is this isn't just about Trent Dilfer talking about Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick is doing that on behalf of those families. And yes, they do appreciate it, and a lot of them have spoken out about that. So when he goes to criticize Kaepernick, he's got to be also more mindful that he's saying to all those family members, yeah, maybe your son got shot even though he's 12 years old and had a toy gun. Maybe your husband got killed when he was unarmed. But hey, you know, I'm going to criticize the people who are standing up, or in this case, sitting down for you. So it's not about calling Trent Dilfer a racist, but it is bringing attention to the fact that this is how old school racism used to work. So be cognizant of that so that you don't go around offending those family members and others. And if you want to offend them and say, who cares? I don't care. The cops are always right. And, you know, black people are, you know, just crying over this for no reason. Okay, then you come out of the shadows and tell us that that's what you really think. Then we'll have a clearer stance of where you stand. Otherwise, if I was Trent Dilfer, I'd be a little bit more careful about it. I don't think that's a final judgment that's too controversial. And I hope he's had time to think about it. Hopefully he comes to that conclusion as well.